New Caledonian geckos are some of the easiest to keep and most common geckos that are in our hobby. I'm going to show you how I keep my hatchlings all the way up to adults of all of my New Caledonian geckos. From crested geckos to lychees, gargoyles, kahua, to even some Eurydactylodes. Let's take a dive into it.
I'm Brian Susan and you're tuned in with Sundown Reptiles.
This is a 6-quart setup that I use for my hatchling geckos all the way up to 5 months old, essentially until they outgrow this setup. You can see here we've got a very young gargoyle gecko that is in this sterilite 6-quart tub. I keep it very simple so I can monitor the animal as it's growing and its first stages of life. I prefer to use sterilite 6-quart tubs because they fit into the rack system that I use, and I do like the tub setup because these hold humidity very well. If you go with a cage that has a lot of ventilation, you're going to have to keep this cage misted more often and you're going to be struggling with humidity. For your baby geckos, I can't recommend a sterilite tub setup enough. For my furnishings, I like to use a piece of cork bark. It could either be a tube or a piece of cork flat. That will provide them an area to climb on, to hide underneath. Also, it provides a rough surface so your gecko can shed its skin. I also will give them a little piece of plastic plant, just a fake plant, just to give them an area to hide in and crawl around in order to give them a little bit of enrichment in their enclosure. I do like to use paper towels as my substrate because it makes it very easy for me to clean their enclosure and I can see when it's dirty. I also will use a small bottle cap or Gatorade top for my water dish for these animals, but most of the time when I keep my animals in this tub, I just mist them nightly, and the water beating up on the sides of the walls usually provides enough water for them to drink until the next misting cycle. I also like to use cardboard egg flats as these provide climbing surface area, a place for them to hide, and if the gecko makes it a mess or if it gets soiled too much, I can just compost it or pitch it. Overall, that's how I keep my hatchlings all the way up to the size where they are going to outgrow this enclosure. Then we bump them up into the next size. This is a 16-quart sterilite. This cage is pretty much an identical setup of what we used for our 6-quart tub. We've got cork tubes, we've got a flat, we've got our little water dish in there, and I will mist this once a night. This cage, while it is not ideal as far as aesthetics, it is very functional and it holds humidity very well, and your geckos will grow very quickly in these. Once they outgrow this enclosure, like this gecko has, I'm going to go ahead and move them into our next size setup. This brings us to our final stage for caging with our geckos. This is an Animal Plastics custom gecko enclosure with a glass front and, my favorite feature, this push door design that opens up into our cage that we have here. Since we took our kahua from the last tub that had outgrown that, it is his time to go into his new enclosure. This will be the final enclosure that this gecko is going to live its life out in. This enclosure measures 18 inches by 24 by 24 inches. I really like the size of this. It seems to work very well for all the different species that I keep, although I do not keep Eurydactylodes in these cages. For those, I generally raise my pairs in 12 by 12 by 18s. I like to put cross branches in the enclosure. I'll put a cork flat, I'll give them a cork tube, and it's always nice to give them a little bit of foliage so that they can also have that enrichment and security if they need it. I do provide an LED light over the top. For my UV, I do like to use ZoomEd T5 5.0 bulbs. as well as a halogen basking bulb that I use for different times of the year. I feel that it is very important for females, especially if they are being bred. I like to use a soil peat mixture for my adults. If you are breeding your gecko, I highly advise to not use any isopods in your enclosure because isopods will eat eggs. I also include a misting system in here. This is a single head that has 2 nozzles with an on-off valve on it. This was also made by Ryan Turnquist at Hydro Herp. I do have my water dish in this enclosure, and I'll also put my feeding cup for the diet that I feed to my New Caledonian geckos. Again, this cage will work well for your gargoyles, your cresteds, Kahua, Saracenorum, Trachyrhynchus, as well as your Leachianus geckos. For my temperatures, from babies all the way into adulthood, I like to keep them in the 70s to low 80 degrees with an 82-degree hot spot if I'm providing them with a basking light. I find that providing a basking spot for my females is utilized, especially when they are gravid, and it helps with the egg production on these animals. You will also notice that each gecko, when it comes to diet, is going to have its own personal preference. It's good to have several different flavors and types of diet on hand. For my misting cycle, I do vary it depending on the time of the year. If the cage is drying out faster than other times, I do usually run it once a night, and occasionally if I notice that my cage is getting dry, depending on the orientation that you have your enclosure in the room, you might want to run it twice per night. This provides the animal with an additional drinking opportunity, as they will drink water that beads up on their furnishings or on the sides of the enclosure. So that's a wrap on our New Caledonian gecko enclosures. We've got our links in the description below. Please like and subscribe. And if you are looking for any New Caledonian species, you can check out my website because I've got some of the finest examples of all the species that are out there, and I appreciate your support. Thanks so much for tuning in, and we'll catch you next time.